The crystalline spires of Corvex Prime pierced the amber sky like frozen lightning, their surfaces catching the light of twin suns and scattering it in prismatic displays across the city below. Marcus Chen pressed his face to the transport's viewport, watching the alien metropolis grow larger as they descended. 3 years of diplomatic training, 2 months of cultural briefings, and countless hours studying Corvani customs had led to this moment, his first solo negotiation mission. Nervous, asked his aide, a veteran diplomat named Phillips who'd been assigned to observe but not interfere. Marcus straightened his formal jacket, the deep blue fabric adorned with Earth's diplomatic insignia. Excited, he corrected, though his sweaty palms suggested otherwise. The Corvani were humanity's first contact with a truly advanced alien civilization, and securing trade agreements with them could revolutionize Earth's technology and economy. The transport settled onto the landing platform with barely a whisper, Corvani engineering making even their largest vessels move with ballet-like grace. Through the viewport, Marcus caught his first glimpse of the delegation waiting to receive them, tall, elegant figures with skin that seemed to shimmer with its own inner light. The airlock hissed open, and Marcus stepped onto the platform. The air was warmer than he'd expected, carrying the scent of something like jasmine mixed with ozone. The Corvani delegation approached with measured steps, their movements flowing like water. At their head walked a figure that made Marcus forget his carefully rehearsed greeting. She stood nearly 7 feet tall, her skin a deep teal that shifted and swirled with subtle patterns of silver. Her hair fell in intricate braids adorned with what looked like living crystals that pulsed with soft light. But it was her armor that truly captured his attention, not the bulky, intimidating gear he'd expected from a warrior race, but something that looked like it had been crafted by artists and engineers working in perfect harmony. The breastplate curved elegantly around her form, made of what appeared to be living metal that flowed like liquid mercury while maintaining perfect rigidity. Geometric patterns were etched into the surface, filled with the same crystalline material as her hair ornaments. The shoulders and arms were covered in overlapping scales that moved with her breathing, each one catching the light differently. It was functional and beautiful, practical and breathtaking. "Welcome to Corvex Prime," she said, her voice carrying musical undertones that made the universal translator seem almost crude. "I am Zara Nightwhisper, first blade of the 7th cohort, assigned as your liaison and protector during your stay." Marcus found himself staring, not just at her armor but at the way she carried herself, confident without arrogance, powerful without aggression. When he realized he'd been silent too long, he cleared his throat and stepped forward. "Thank you for the welcome. I'm Marcus Chen, Earth's trade representative." He paused, then added with genuine admiration, "I have to say, that's absolutely stunning armor. The craftsmanship is incredible, I've never seen anything like it." The effect was immediate and dramatic. Zara's skin, already a beautiful teal, suddenly blazed with brilliant crimson that spread from her face down her exposed arms like ripples on a pond. The other Corvani in the delegation stepped back as if they'd been physically struck, their own skin shifting through various shades of what Marcus could only interpret as shock and alarm. "By the eternal flame," whispered one of the older Corvani, a dignified figure with silver-shot hair. "He speaks the ritual of claiming." "What?" Marcus looked around in confusion. "I just complimented her armor. Did I say something wrong?" Zara's eyes were wide, her skin continuing to pulse with that alarming crimson. She opened her mouth, closed it, then finally managed, You honor me with your words, Marcus Chen of Earth." But her voice was strange, formal in a way that hadn't been there moments before. The other Corvani were murmuring among themselves, and Marcus caught fragments of translation, unprecedented. "Never between species. The council must be informed immediately." "I'm sorry," Marcus said, genuine concern coloring his voice. "I didn't mean to cause any offense. Your armor really is beautiful, but if that's inappropriate to say." "Not inappropriate," Zara said quickly, her skin now cycling through shades of red and deep purple. "Among my people, when a warrior is complimented on their armor by someone they are escorting, it carries meaning." The older Corvani stepped forward, his expression grave but not unkind. "I am Elder Thorn of the Trade Council," he said to Marcus. Perhaps we should discuss this matter in private before proceeding with the formal ceremonies. Marcus felt his stomach drop. Did I just commit some kind of diplomatic incident? Not an incident, Elder Thorn said carefully. But perhaps an engagement. Engagement? Marcus's voice cracked slightly. Like, engaged to be married engagement. Zara's skin flashed bright gold, then settled into steady purple. The ritual of claiming is complex. When one speaks of a warrior's armor with such specific appreciation, while being escorted by that warrior, it can be interpreted as a formal declaration of romantic intent. Marcus stared at her. Romantic intent? But I just met you 30 seconds ago. Time is not always a factor in matters of the heart, Elder Thorn observed. Among the Corvani, we believe that true recognition can happen in an instant. Your words, spoken in the presence of witnesses, while standing on our sacred ground. He spread his hands. The ritual has been invoked, whether intentionally or not. The transport platform suddenly felt very small. Marcus was acutely aware of every Corvani eye focused on him, of Zara's continued color changes, of Philip standing behind him with his mouth hanging open. What does this mean, exactly? Marcus asked, proud that his voice remained steady. It means, Zara said, her skin now a deep indigo shot through with silver, that according to our laws, you have formally requested permission to court me. And according to the same laws, Elder Thorn added, Zara has accepted by not immediately rejecting your declaration. Marcus looked at Zara, who was now staring at the ground, her skin cycling through what he was beginning to realize might be embarrassment. Did you want to reject it? She looked up, meeting his eyes directly. For a moment, her skin settled into a warm golden hue that made her look almost luminous. No. I did not reject it. The admission hung in the air between them like a living thing. Marcus felt his heart rate spike, though whether from panic or something else entirely, he couldn't say. So what happens now? He asked. Elder Thorn exchanged glances with the other Corvani delegation members. Now, Marcus Chen of Earth, you and Zara Nightwhisper must undergo the trials of compatibility. 3 tests to determine if your bond is genuine or merely a mistake of translation. And if we fail these trials? Then the claiming is void, and you may proceed with your trade negotiations without any romantic complications. Elder Thorn's expression grew more serious. But if you succeed, you will be bonded according to Corvani law, with all the responsibilities and privileges that entails. Marcus looked at Zara again. She was tall, beautiful, clearly intelligent, and built like she could bench press a small vehicle. Under any other circumstances, he would have been flattered by her interest. But this was his first diplomatic mission, the future of Earth's relationship with an advanced alien civilization was at stake, and he'd apparently just proposed marriage by complimenting someone's outfit. How long do we have to decide? He asked. The trials must begin within 3 days of the claiming, Zara said, her voice soft but carrying clearly across the platform. And they must be completed before the moon cycle ends. That's 2 weeks, Elder Thorn clarified, apparently reading the confusion on Marcus's face. 2 weeks to either get married to an alien warrior or potentially torpedo the most important diplomatic mission in human history. Marcus rubbed his temples, feeling the beginning of what promised to be an epic headache. Well, he said finally, looking at Zara's expectant face, her skin now a nervous flickering between blue and green, I guess we should get to know each other. For the first time since his arrival, she smiled, a genuine expression that made her entire face light up and sent warm golden ripples across her skin. I would like that, she said simply. As the delegation began moving toward the city, Marcus found himself walking beside the alien warrior who was now, apparently, his intended bride. The spires of Corvex Prime stretched ahead of them, beautiful and intimidating against the alien sky. He'd come here hoping to secure a trade agreement. Instead, he might be going home with a wife. The thought should have terrified him. Strangely, as he glanced at Zara's profile and saw the way the twin suns caught the crystalline ornaments in her hair, it didn't. The guest quarters in the Corvani diplomatic complex were more luxurious than any hotel Marcus had ever seen on Earth. The walls were made of the same living crystal as the city's spires, casting soft, ever-shifting patterns of light across surfaces that seemed to breathe with the building's organic rhythm. But despite the beauty surrounding him, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that he was in the most elegant prison cell in the galaxy. He stood at the floor-to-ceiling window, watching the twin suns set over Corvex Prime, painting the sky in shades of amber and rose. Somewhere in this sprawling city was Zara, probably dealing with her own version of this surreal situation. The thought of her made his chest tighten with an emotion he couldn't quite name. A soft chime announced a visitor. The door dissolved into mist, another bit of Corvani technology that still amazed him, revealing Elder Thorn. The older Corvani entered with the measured grace of his species, but Marcus could see tension in the set of his shoulders. "Elder Thorn," Marcus said, turning from the window. "I was hoping you'd come. I have questions." "As do I," Thorn replied, settling into one of the chairs that molded itself to accommodate his tall frame. "But perhaps yours should be answered first. You are, after all, the one whose world has been turned upside down." Marcus sat across from him, grateful for the directness. "What exactly did I agree to? I mean, I know I accidentally proposed or something, but what does that mean for the Corvani?" Thorn was quiet for a moment, his skin shifting through subtle shades of blue. What Marcus was learning indicated deep thought among his people. "The ritual of claiming is ancient, predating our contact with other worlds by millennia. When a warrior displays their armor in formal greeting, and another speaks of its beauty with specific words of admiration, it indicates recognition of the warrior's strength, skill, and worthiness as a partner. But I'm not Corvani. Surely that changes things." "That is precisely what makes this situation so unprecedented." Thorn's skin flickered with what might have been amusement. "Our laws make no distinction between species. The ritual is the ritual, regardless of who invokes it." Marcus rubbed his forehead. "And Zara? How is she handling this?" "That is, complicated." Thorn's expression grew more serious. "Zara Nightwhisper is not just any warrior. She is the youngest First Blade in our history, a position of great honor and responsibility. Her family lineage traces back to the founding of our warrior caste. This claiming, especially with an off-worlder, has created considerable discussion among her clan." "Discussion, or opposition?" "Both." Thorn's honesty was appreciated, if not comforting. "There are those who see this as an opportunity, a chance to forge bonds between our species that go beyond mere trade agreements. Others view it as a dilution of our traditions." Before Marcus could respond, another chime sounded. This time, the visitor was Zara herself. She entered wearing civilian clothes, a flowing garment that shifted colors like her skin, currently a subdued silver blue. Without her armor, she looked more approachable, though no less formidable. "Elder Thorn," she acknowledged with a formal nod, then turned to Marcus. "I hope you don't mind the intrusion. I thought we should speak." "Please," Marcus gestured to another chair. "I was just learning about how much trouble I've caused." Zara's skin flickered with quick bands of gold, amusement, he was learning to recognize. "You speak as if you acted alone. I could have rejected the claiming immediately. The fact that I didn't." She settled into the chair, which adjusted to her height. "The fault, if there is one, is shared." "Why didn't you?" Marcus asked, the question out before he could stop himself. "Rejected, I mean." Zara's skin deepened to a rich purple, and she was quiet for so long that Marcus wondered if he'd overstepped. Finally, she spoke, her voice softer than before. "When you looked at my armor, your expression was genuine. Not the calculating assessment of a diplomat or the empty flattery I've grown accustomed to from suitors. You saw beauty where you expected only function. In that moment, I saw something in you that intrigued me." Elder Thorn cleared his throat diplomatically. "Which brings us to the current situation. The trials of compatibility must begin tomorrow if they are to be completed within the required timeframe. What exactly do these trials involve? Marcus asked. 3 tests, Zara replied, her professional demeanor returning. The trial of minds, where we must demonstrate mental compatibility through shared problem solving. The trial of bodies, which tests physical harmony and trust. And the trial of hearts, where we must prove that our emotions are genuine, not merely diplomatic convenience. Marcus felt his pulse quicken. And if we fail? Then the claiming is void, Thorne said. You return to your trade negotiations, Zara returns to her duties, and this becomes merely an interesting footnote in diplomatic history. And if we succeed? Zara's skin shifted to a deep, warm gold. Then we become bonded according to Corvani law. Partners in all things, bound to each other's welfare and honor. The weight of it settled over Marcus like a blanket. Marriage to someone he'd known for less than a day, in a ceremony that would tie him to an alien world and culture he barely understood. It should have been terrifying. Instead, looking at Zara's face, intelligent, strong, and unexpectedly vulnerable, he found himself curious rather than afraid. There's something else, Thorne continued. The trials are not private affairs. They will be observed by representatives from both our peoples, including your diplomatic team and several members of the Corvani High Council. Great, Marcus muttered. A shotgun wedding as a spectator sport. Zara's head tilted in confusion. Shotgun wedding. Human expression, Marcus explained. It means a rushed marriage, usually under pressure. Her skin rippled with deeper purple tones. Is that how you see this? As pressure? The hurt in her voice made Marcus realize how his words had sounded. He leaned forward, meeting her eyes directly. No, that's not what I meant. This situation is overwhelming, yes, but not because of you. You seem like an extraordinary person, Zara. Under different circumstances. He trailed off, not sure how to finish. Under different circumstances, she said quietly, we might have had time to court properly. To learn each other's ways slowly, without the weight of 2 civilizations watching our every move. But we don't have that luxury, Marcus said. No, she agreed. We have 3 trials and 2 weeks to decide if we're compatible enough to spend our lives together. Elder Thorne rose from his chair. I'll leave you to discuss the specifics. The first trial begins at dawn in the Hall of Convergence. Both your people's representatives will be present. After he left, Marcus and Zara sat in comfortable silence for a moment. The city lights had begun to twinkle beyond the window, creating a constellation of alien beauty. Can I ask you something? Marcus said finally. Of course. What would happen to your career, your position, if we went through with this? I mean, being bonded to a human. Zara's skin shifted through several colors before settling on a contemplative blue-green. I would remain First Blade, but my duties would expand. A bonded warrior speaks for both partners in matters of honor and law. Your status as Earth's representative would make our bond politically significant. And personally? What would it mean for you personally? She was quiet for a long moment. I have spent my life focused on duty, on perfecting my skills as a warrior and leader. Personal relationships were always secondary, something to consider later when my career was more established. Her skin brightened slightly. But when you looked at me today, when you spoke of my armor with such appreciation, I realized that perhaps I have been too focused on later, and not enough on now. Marcus felt something shift in his chest, a warmth that had nothing to do with the room's temperature. For what it's worth, I think any man, human, Corvani, or otherwise, would be lucky to have your attention. The compliment sent cascading waves of gold across her skin, and for the first time since they'd met, she looked genuinely flustered. You do that on purpose, she accused, but her tone was amused rather than annoyed. Do what? Say things that make my skin betray my feelings. Marcus grinned. I like the way you look when you're happy. The gold suits you. More gold ripples, deeper this time. You are incorrigible. I'm charming. There's a difference. Is there? But she was smiling now, a real smile that transformed her face from merely beautiful to radiant. They talked for another hour, sharing stories about their worlds, their families, their hopes for the future. Marcus learned that Zara had been trained from childhood in combat and diplomacy, that she spoke 7 languages, and that she secretly enjoyed writing poetry. Zara discovered that Marcus had originally wanted to be a teacher before falling into diplomatic work, that he missed Earth's reign, and that he had an irrational fear of insects despite having traveled across the galaxy. When she finally rose to leave, the city beyond the window had settled into its nighttime rhythm, the living crystal buildings pulsing with a slower, deeper light. Marcus, she said, pausing at the dissolving doorway. Tomorrow, when the trials begin, remember that whatever happens, you gave me something I hadn't realized I was missing. What's that? Her skin glowed with warm, steady gold. The possibility of something beyond duty. After she left, Marcus stood again at the window, looking out at the alien city that might become his home. The thought no longer filled him with panic. Instead, he found himself looking forward to tomorrow, to the chance to discover what lay beyond the accidental bond that had brought them together. In less than 12 hours, he would begin 3 trials that would determine the course of his life. As he finally headed to bed, Marcus realized he wasn't afraid of failing the trials. He was afraid of how much he already wanted to pass them. The Hall of Convergence lived up to its name. Marcus had never seen architecture that seemed to breathe, its crystalline walls expanding and contracting with an organic rhythm that made him feel like he was standing inside some vast, benevolent creature. Tiered seating rose on all sides, filled with observers from both Earth and Corvex Prime. He spotted Phillips and the rest of his diplomatic team on one side, their faces a mixture of fascination and barely concealed panic. Opposite them sat the Corvani High Council, their skin colors shifting in what he'd learned were complex emotional displays. At the center of the hall stood Marcus and Zara, facing a panel of 3 judges, Elder Thorn, a stern-looking human woman he didn't recognize, and a Corvani whose skin remained a steady, neutral gray, apparently the mark of someone trained to be impartial. Before we begin, announced the human judge, I am Judge Harrison, appointed by Earth's diplomatic corps to observe these proceedings. Let the record show that both participants enter these trials of their own free will. Marcus glanced at Zara, who stood beside him in her formal armor, not the same set he'd complimented, but equally stunning. Her skin showed steady bands of blue and silver, what he'd learned indicated determination mixed with nervousness. We do, they said in unison, having practiced the response the night before. Then let the trial of minds commence, declared the gray-skinned Corvani judge. The floor beneath them shifted, rising to form a platform while holographic displays materialized around them. Marcus recognized some elements, star charts, mathematical equations, trade route calculations, but others were completely alien, symbols and concepts from Corvani science and philosophy. You have 1 hour to solve the paradox of the distant harbor, Elder Thorn announced. A theoretical problem that requires both human and Corvani knowledge to resolve. You may communicate freely, but you must reach your conclusion together. The problem itself was elegant in its complexity, a scenario involving faster-than-light travel, resource allocation, and cultural exchange between multiple species. Parts of it were straightforward diplomatic puzzles that Marcus could handle, while other sections required understanding of Corvani physics and social structures that were completely beyond him. The temporal displacement calculations, Zara murmured, studying one of the holographic displays. These are based on human theories, aren't they? Marcus nodded, moving to stand beside her. This close, he could smell the subtle scent she wore, something like cinnamon and starlight. Einstein-Rosen bridge mathematics, modified for practical application. But I don't understand how it interfaces with your people's concept of. He gestured helplessly at a swirling symbol. Harmonic resonance, she supplied. The idea that consciousness itself affects the fabric of spacetime. Her skin flickered with bands of green, excitement, he'd learned. Your people approach physics mechanically, while we see it as inherently connected to life and thought. So if we combine the approaches. Marcus began working through the equations while Zara manipulated the Corvani symbols, their different perspectives creating a solution neither could have reached alone. They fell into a rhythm, his logical progression complementing her intuitive leaps. When he got stuck on a particularly complex trade regulation scenario, she offered insights from Corvani law. When she struggled with human psychological motivations, he explained the cultural context behind seemingly irrational decisions. There, Zara said finally, her skin glowing with satisfied gold as the holographic display showed their completed solution. The harbor can be reached, but only if both species contribute their unique strengths. The judges conferred briefly before Elder Thorne announced, "The trial of minds is complete. You have demonstrated intellectual compatibility and complementary thinking. The first trial is passed." A cheer went up from the human section of the audience, while the Corvani displayed their approval through cascading waves of approving colors across their collective skin. Marcus felt a surge of pride, not just in passing the trial, but in how naturally he and Zara had worked together. "The second trial will commence after a brief recess," Judge Harrison announced. During the break, Marcus found himself approached by a young man he didn't recognize, tall, athletic, with the easy confidence of someone used to getting his way. "Marcus Chen," the stranger extended his hand. "Jackson Reed, with the Colonial Development Initiative. I wanted to introduce myself before things get more complicated." Marcus shook his hand warily. "Complicated how?" Jackson's smile was sharp. "Well, if you fail these trials, Earth's going to need someone else to handle the Corvani negotiations. Someone without the baggage of a failed alien romance. And that someone would be you." "I've been studying Corvani culture for 3 years," Jackson said smoothly. "I understand their psychology, their economic systems, their military capabilities. No offense, but you stumbled into this situation by accident. Earth needs professionals handling our first interstellar alliance." Before Marcus could respond, another voice cut through the conversation. "Is this human bothering you, Marcus?" Marcus turned to see a Corvani woman approaching, tall even by their standards, with skin that shifted through aggressive shades of red and orange. She moved with the same predatory grace as Zara, and the family resemblance was unmistakable. "You must be Kira," Marcus said, remembering Zara's mention of her sister. "Kira Starfall, yes. And you are the human who has somehow captured my sister's interest." Her tone was neutral, but her skin color suggested she was reserving judgment. Jackson stepped back slightly. "I should return to my seat. Good luck with the remaining trials, Marcus. You'll need it." After he left, Kira's skin settled into more neutral tones. "That one carries the scent of ambition and jealousy. Be careful of him. You can actually smell emotions. Among other things." Kira's expression softened slightly. "I came to tell you that Zara spoke of you last night. She has not shown such interest in anyone since, well, ever. Do not break her heart, human." "I don't intend to." Intentions and outcomes are not always aligned. But her skin showed flickers of approval. "However, you protected her honor just now by not responding to that male's provocations. Perhaps you are learning our ways." The second trial proved to be the most physically demanding thing Marcus had ever experienced. The trial of bodies took place in a vast gymnasium where he and Zara had to navigate an obstacle course that required not just individual skill, but perfect coordination between them. They were bound together by energy fields that required them to move in synchronization. When one stumbled, both fell. When one moved too quickly, the other was pulled off balance. It was an exercise in trust, timing, and physical harmony that pushed both of them to their limits. Marcus quickly discovered that Zara was even more athletic than he'd imagined. She moved with liquid grace, her warrior training evident in every step. But rather than leaving him behind, she adapted her pace to match his, offering support when he struggled and celebrating his successes with ripples of golden approval across her skin. The rope bridge, she called out as they approached a swaying span across a deep chasm. You'll need to trust me completely here. I do, Marcus replied, surprised by how true it was. They crossed together, her strength compensating for his uncertainty, his steady nerve balancing her occasional impulsiveness. By the time they reached the finish line, they were both exhausted but exhilarated, moving together as if they'd been partners for years instead of days. The trial of bodies is past, announced the gray-skinned judge. You have demonstrated physical trust and complementary abilities. The final trial was scheduled for the next day, giving Marcus time to process what had happened. He'd expected to struggle with the physical challenge, but instead had found himself working with Zara as if they were two parts of the same organism. That evening, as he sat in his quarters reviewing the day's events, another visitor arrived. This time it was Phillips, his diplomatic aide, looking harried and concerned. Marcus, we need to talk, Phillips said, settling into a chair. There are some things happening behind the scenes that you should know about. What kind of things? Political maneuvering. Some people back on Earth aren't happy about this bonding situation. They think it compromises your objectivity as a negotiator. Phillips leaned forward. There's talk of recalling you and sending Reed to finish the trade negotiations. Marcus felt a cold knot form in his stomach. They can't do that. I'm in the middle of legally binding trials. They can and they will if they think it serves Earth's interests better. Phillips's expression was sympathetic but firm. There's also been some chatter from Corvani traditionalists who oppose the bonding on their end. Tomorrow's trial, there may be people who want to see you fail. The weight of responsibility settled over Marcus like a heavy cloak. It wasn't just about him and Zara anymore, it was about the future relationship between their species, about trade agreements worth billions, about setting precedents for interstellar diplomacy. What do you think I should do? Marcus asked. Phillips was quiet for a moment. I think you should ask yourself what you really want. Not what's politically expedient, not what looks good for your career, but what you actually want. He stood to leave. Because tomorrow, in that final trial, that's what's going to matter. After Phillips left, Marcus found himself back at the window, looking out at the lights of Corvex Prime. Somewhere out there was Zara, probably dealing with her own version of political pressure and family expectations. The thought of her made his decision crystal clear. He didn't just want to pass tomorrow's trial. He wanted to build a life with the remarkable woman who had somehow become the center of his universe in less than 3 days. The trial of hearts would be the ultimate test, not just of their compatibility, but of whether their feelings were genuine enough to overcome the forces trying to tear them apart. As Marcus prepared for sleep, he found himself more determined than nervous. Tomorrow, he would prove to both their worlds that some bonds transcended politics, species, and the careful calculations of diplomacy. Tomorrow, he would choose love over duty, hope over fear. Tomorrow, he would discover if Zara would make the same choice.